Week 4 of the fantasy football season is just around the corner. You need some waiver wire help? Well, I'm your guy. Let's go!
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Lateral Show. Fasten your seatbelts, because here we go.
Welcome back to another edition of The Lateral Show, a sideways look at fantasy football here on the Fantasy Six Pack YouTube channel. If you don't already, please subscribe. Hit that like button. It would mean a ton to us. This video will break down the Week 4 waiver wire for the 2022 fantasy football season. Now, if you want to read the entirety of my column at fantasysixpack.net, you have to get behind the paywall and you have to be an all-access member. You can check out all of that at fantasysixpack.net/plans. That will not only give you access to the remainder of my column, but I'm talking the Discord community, all of our DFS tools, and award-winning rankings. What more could you possibly ask for? Come on, sign up, go for it. Fantasy Six Pack, baby. fantasysixpack.net/plans. Now, into the waiver wire. As far as this week goes, it's really just the NFC North running back show, because that's pretty much what we have to talk about. There are injuries in the NFC North at the running back position for fantasy studs like Dalvin Cook, potentially missing time with a shoulder injury. Also, DeAndre Swift, maybe he'll be held out for a couple weeks. And then David Montgomery, considered to be day-to-day with his injury, but who knows how that's going to work out. You have to go out and pick up, in this order, that's how I put them. Now, if you disagree with me, I completely understand. Jamal Williams of the Detroit Lions, Khalil Herbert of the Chicago Bears, and Alexander Mattison of the Minnesota Vikings. The reason I have them in this order is because, well, let's start with Jamal Williams. Even if DeAndre Swift doesn't miss time, Williams has been a standalone fantasy asset for the majority of this season. Now, week 2, not nearly as flashy, didn't really find the end zone, but week 1, couple touchdowns, super cool. And then just this past Sunday, he almost had 25 points. Now, some of that did have to do with the fact that Swift was a little injured, but look, Jamal Williams has been good for fantasy before, whether it was back in his time as part of the Green Bay Packers or even parts of last year with this same Detroit Lions team. That backfield is really a two-man approach. You have to go for Jamal Williams if he is out there on the waiver wire. The second priority in my mind is Khalil Herbert. Now, like I said, we're not entirely sure if David Montgomery is going to miss time, but if he does, there was a stretch of time last year where Khalil Herbert took over for Montgomery in Chicago for 4 games. And in that stretch, he was the RB18 in PPR scoring. That was pretty impressive. Also, in that season last year, Khalil Herbert went over 100 yards against the Buccaneers' run defense. Pretty impressive, right? Look, I think he's a better running back than David Montgomery at this point. Now, maybe that's a bit of a hot take, but even if you look at some of the numbers, they've received a similar amount of touches so far this season, and Herbert is performing much better. That's a guy that I think you really have to prioritize. Alexander Mattison kind of finishes last on this list because unlike Herbert and especially Jamal Williams, Madison doesn't really have a ton of value if Dalvin Cook is healthy. When healthy, Dalvin Cook is the rushing attack in Minnesota. There's not really room for a second guy, but whenever Madison has taken over in the past, he has done very well. I reference this tweet from Eric Moody of ESPN in the article. Alexander Mattison has started 6 career games for the Minnesota Vikings. In those games, he's averaged 23.3 touches, 115.5 total yards, and 20.1 fantasy points. This guy's insane. He's plug and play. If Dalvin Cook's out, you just scoot in Alexander Mattison. Woohoo! It's like nothing changed. That's where I would look. Biggest thing on the waiver wire this week, NFC North running backs. Now, if you're not looking for running backs, I have a couple other suggestions for you. My number 1 receiver target that I would go after, Zay Jones of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I talked a little bit about him on the flagship edition of the Lateral Show. ahead of week 1 and a little bit in that subsequent show, a few weeks ago. So far, it's gone pretty well for him. In terms of PFF grading, Zay Jones is on par with Amon-Ra St. Brown as PFF's 16th highest graded receiver, minimum of 10 targets, through 3 weeks. Now, I cited that before the conclusion of the Monday night game. Maybe that number is a little bit off now, but either way, point stands. Zay Jones has been about as good as Amon-Ra St. Brown per PFF. Take that with a grain of salt. It is what it is. I can't tell you how to feel about PFF, but also Zay Jones is a popular target of Trevor Lawrence's, not only just in terms of like the raw data, the whatnot, in the red zone. Anecdotally speaking, as somebody just watching the games, Trevor Lawrence is targeting Zay Jones when they're getting in close. That's a really big thing. You want those guys for your lineup. The battle of the Joneses for the wide receiver 2 in Jacksonville still wages on, though. Marvin Jones not completely going away. He's still competing with Zay Jones for that share of the target opportunity behind Christian Kirk. But so far, Zay Jones has done much better with it. That's the guy that I would definitely go for. Now, if you're looking for tight end help, Tyler Conklin, okay? We talked about this. We talked about this on the last episode of the Lateral Show. I talked about it in my Waiver Wire stashes piece that came out on Saturday. I told you, hey, go ahead and pick this guy up. He's basically just the store brand of Travis Kelce, okay? In terms of, target opportunity and whatnot. The yardage and the efficiency is not there. Now, the reason I make that comparison is just because they're both tight ends that receive a lot of work in their offense. Tyler Conklin's not Travis Kelce, obviously. It's a bit of an exaggeration. But, dude, if I had told you Tyler Conklin would be the tight end 3 in fantasy by the end of week 3, would you have even believed that? Dude, 12.7 PPR points per game. It may not be super efficient. It may be kind of ugly, but, Conklin's doing really well. So if you're still looking for tight end help, that's the guy that I would go with, even with the looming return of quarterback Zach Wilson. I don't think that they're going to go away from something that works in the offense as soon as, the normal signal caller is going to be back out there. But on the off chance that you don't want to take that risk, there are a couple guys that I have mentioned behind the paywall. Go ahead and take a look at that. And to round it out, if you're just looking for a really good streaming option, I mentioned it in the last couple articles that I did, actually. Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions are going up against the Seattle Seahawks in week 4. That's a cakewalk of a matchup. I mean, seriously, not bad. Also, despite the fact that Jared Goff did not do particularly well in Sunday's game against Minnesota, he's still 11th in points per game and points overall on the year in fantasy. Jared Goff, a little bit of a boring option, albeit, not very inspiring, but if you need the help, you need the help, and beggars can't be choosers. That's where I would go for streaming the quarterback position in week 4. Look no further than Jared Goff. There are so many other players that I would love to talk to you about because, there's so many fun things behind the paywall, but I can't tell you about those things. You have to go to fantasysixpack.net/plans, okay? I wrote about so many other players. There's a ton of really good information in there, including another running back that I think you have to go out there and grab. But if you don't have the all access, you can't access the remainder of the article. You don't get our DFS tools. You don't get into the Discord community, and you don't get the award-winning rankings at Fantasy Six Pack. So that's where I have to leave you. Do your best out there. Make those claims. Do your thing. Don't blow too much of your fab budget. But remember, if you have to, be aggressive. Fantasy Six Pack.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Lateral Show. Fasten your seatbelts, because here we go.